It was great.
Okay, so I'll explain the project, and then there'll be plenty of time to chit-chat with your group and do that over the next 3 days. Next 3 days of class time. So in a similar style, I'm going to give you the project, I'm going to walk through the data, and then as a group, kind of solidify your questions, and then come to my office with questions, things like that. Before I begin, again, paper presentation project, you're required to be here on final exam day. Refer to the handbook about that for more details about why, even though it's not a 200-point exam, why we still insist that you're here. It's because we have a requirement that you are here. I can't change that. So what you're going to be working on is this project for Cardinal Hardware. Okay. So this is a hardware store. They're a very large hardware store. Large in the sense that they have a lot of suppliers, a lot of business, and customers. Typically in business, something that you probably have not covered at all in any of your classes, but is real to most every business out there, is that when you're large enough to have your own freight company, so if you have your own semi-trucks, I'm sure you've seen Target, it has Target, Fastenal, I'm sure around town you've seen Fastenal trucks, seen Target. Many other companies have their own trucking. Walmart has their own trucking company within their own company, a subsidiary of their business. So we're under the same premise here with this freight project for this Cardinal Hardware. This Cardinal Hardware has its own trucking company that it uses to support its business. So what that means is the Cardinal Hardware company wants to use its own trucks to pick up products that it purchases from manufacturers. Okay, so instead of a manufacturer having product and sending it on their own truck or UPSing it to hardware store wants to send its own trucks to go to the manufacturer to pick that up. Okay? Why do you think they would want to do that? Why would a customer want to use their own trucks to pick up from a supplier? Cost savings? Yep, cost savings. If I have my own truckers, I've got my own freight company, I've got all that stuff, it's going to be cheaper for me than paying shipping costs, certainly from UPS. UPS shipping costs are 10 times as much as what you can put on a truck. UPS has all this overhead, stock, shareholders, it's a publicly traded company, they've got a lot of fat profit margins to maintain. So this company says, hey, if I send my own freight truck to, let's say, 3M manufacturing up in the cities, if I, Cardinal Hardware, send that stuff up there, I want a rebate or I want a discount on the product I buy. Okay? And 3M would say, all right, that sounds good, because then I don't have to hire my own trucking company or truck routes to send to Winona. That gives them cost savings as well. So both parties have cost savings because 3M doesn't have to have their own system to get that product down to Winona. So the customer hardware store is saying, okay, I want 3% discount on everything I buy. If I buy $100,000 worth of product, I'm getting 3% back as a refund, or more so what they call a rebate, end of year rebate. So I don't care what industry you've covered in any of your classes, I'll tell you right now, 9 out of 10 industries have an end of the year rebate program. Steel mills, raw material suppliers, retail stores, car dealerships. So if a car dealer ever says, hey, I can't go any lower than $21,000 on this car, they're lying. Because at the end of the year, the manufacturer will give them a rebate back for selling that car. Right? So there's always these little incentives and rebates that are offered to the actual salesperson or the sales company. They can go deeper. They're more profitable than they report. So if I'm selling a $2 item and it costs me $1, on the surface I'm getting a profit of $1. But at the end of the year, I go back to that manufacturer that sold me the product and say, I sold 16 units of this product. I paid $16 for it. Per our contract, I'm getting 3% back on freight. I'm getting 3% back on marketing funds. So you owe me 6% of what I bought from you. Then I don't care what industry you're in, food service, maybe not at the restaurant level, but at the wholesale food service level, where they're working with farmers or they're working with wholesale distributors, things like that. This is how it works. Packaging companies, so anything to do with packaging, there's always this end of the year rebate. So that's the premise of your project. You are going to determine whether it is better to use a variable rate or a fixed rate system. So if you remember back to fixed cost and variable cost, it's the same kind of logic here. Variable, it can swing. Prices can change. So today I have an agreement with a company that they will pay me 3% for back on freight. And then next week, when oil prices skyrocket and fuel prices skyrocket, if I'm under a fixed contract, I will still only get 3%. Even though fuel prices tripled or something like that, I'm still only getting 3%. That's a fixed system. Within that contract period, it doesn't change. I'm always getting a 3% rebate regardless of what crude oil prices or gasoline or diesel fuel is doing. Under a variable system, and this is very important because this is another thing you're going to see in business eventually. Maybe not right away, but once you lead a team or you're in the company for 2 or 3 years, you're going to see this. Where there's contract periods that say, if the price of crude oil goes up 10% within a 3-month time frame, we will increase your rebate by 10%. Okay? So that's variable rate. Tying it to a raw material or tying it to what we call a pricing mechanism. If the labor rate goes up more than 3% within 6 months, we will increase your refund or we will increase your rebate. So that's variable pricing, that's pricing mechanism. So what your job is, you have a lot of supplier data, and you've got some historical information about how this Cardinal Hardware did their pricing mechanism, fixed versus variable. What you need to do is evaluate their work and improve it if it needs to be improved. So that's the essence of the project. You're role-playing that you're an analyst, you're a financial analyst in this case, where you're looking over previous financial results and determining if it could have been done better. Would a variable rate system have brought in more profit for the company? That's the hypothesis, or that's the question you're tasked with. So you're going to see a lot of data. It's pretty organized. Here, I'll show you. Okay, so I want to show you the pricing mechanism example first. So I've got a spreadsheet here. So a very simple spreadsheet. Your spreadsheet goes out quarterly and has a lot more data. I just want to show you how this mechanism works, and you're free to use any mechanism you want. That makes sense to you. There will be people from 3M, from Fastenal, and an actual trucking company here to judge the presentations on study exam day. So I've brought in lots of people that know this stuff. That what they like to do, especially, and I know it's final exam day, so you're probably like, get me out of here. I want to get going on my next exam. They will give you real feedback on how this stuff works. So this is not for a company, so this isn't for 3M, this isn't for Fastenal, this isn't for the trucking company, but they know this stuff. So instead of just saying, hey, good job, they will likely want to talk to you for 3 to 5 minutes after the presentation to give you insight into how well you really did according to industry standard on this kind of stuff.
So we all have to come at the same time when we present?
Nope.
Okay, so you're just going to give us a time?
Yep, I will be giving times. It is groups of 4, so we'll have 6 presentations. And I believe it's 15-minute presentations. So 10 minutes of speaking and then anticipating some questions. And then you're out the door. So those of you with strategic management experience, you know what I mean by out the door. You're there for 45 minutes in strategic management and then you're gone. So in this case, then you're gone. And this is really how it is in business. If you're going to have a meeting about this, you're not going to be able to sit around for an hour or 2 hours talking through stuff. It's really, hey, I got 10 minutes. Tell me whether we should go with a fixed method or a variable method. That's what they need out of that meeting, that presentation. Should we go with fixed or variable? Okay, then why? Well, if we went variable, you would have got $72,000 more in profit. And then they would have said, well, what about the recession? Because there is recession data in here. I said, well, during the recession, a variable method would have hurt you versus a fixed method, because in a fixed method, you don't change your rate. But in a variable method, we would have seen a very low return. But overall, so 10, 15 minutes to get your point across. Very, very quick, but very, very assertive as well with your time. Okay, so what I've got here, it looks really messy, but it'll make sense, I think. So I've got fuel price for a year and a half, roughly. Well, just a year and 4 months here. Okay. So this is the fuel price. I got it from I just type in diesel fuel price, and then it brings me a government website by month. So I just had that here for you. This is what the average price across the country was for diesel fuel. Okay. And fuel price percent change, I've just got that down here, where if you're curious, it's just new minus old, divided by old. I know you've done this in CS 102 and some other classes. Where's my formula bar? You have free reign of how you want to set this up. Again, it goes back to those questions. Should we have a fixed or variable rate, and why? Believe me, you can talk an hour on that topic. You won't, but you could talk about all kinds of different angles. There's so much meat in here to talk about. So if I were to just evaluate your month-over-month prices, we'd be up. The price has risen by 3%, 3.12. Then next month it's down a little bit, down more. Huge increase. The reason I show you this is business. When you're talking big business, millions of dollars, nobody does business this way. Nobody changes their pricing every month. You go to Target, yeah, you have sales and promotions, marketing, but Target doesn't change the price of milk every month because dairy prices went up last month. They don't go from $3.19 to $3.62 down to $3.42 down to $3.11. They don't do that. It's too much work. Customers get confused. You have to keep lots of marketing people, pricing analysts, knowing how to do all this stuff. It's a lot of work, a lot of overhead. So companies don't change their pricing month over month. Gas stations, yes, but typical retail environments, they don't change their pricing this way. So what they do is they have typically a fixed term of pricing, or contract pricing, or options pricing, or forward contracts. You might have heard of in other classes. And that leads me down to here, pricing mechanism. So in this example, a company has said, we will evaluate the pricing peg, or the rebate, we will evaluate the rebate every 3 months. Instead of every month, where we're going to change the rebate and get really confusing and change our prices to our customers all the time, we're going to look at it every 3 months. Right? So that's why I averaged out. So averaged out these periods here. Right? I did the same over here. So this is the average of these months. Right? And then this is the average of these months. This is the average of these months. This is the average of these months. Along with that, I did a percent change calculation. This by this. Right? So again, this minus this divided by this. So new minus old divided by old. Okay? Now the reason I did this, again, is because that company has agreed we'll look at what fuel has done every 3 months. Every 3 months we'll take the average of the last 3 months. So there is a meeting so in April, in July, in October, in January, and in April again, there is a meeting. 3M is meeting with Cardinal Hardware, looking through the fuel prices. Could be an online meeting, could be a conference call, could be in person, but they're evaluating what things have done. Okay? So this value right here, if the contract were to say, for every percent change in fuel prices, we will change the rebate. So if the rebate, as you can see here, was 3%, we would increase the rebate by 2.68%. That could be where you guys go with your project. Okay, that's an option. But if you're saying so this is saying that fuel prices rose 2.68%. That is not saying 5.68% is the new rebate. Okay, that's not what that is saying. What it's saying is 3% times 2.68%. So that would be like saying, let's fun y'all, 0.03 times 0.0268. Okay, and put a 1 in there. Oops. So the rebate has barely changed. Okay? So that's a big difference. Okay? What I want to show you next is very common in contracts. So can we all agree that if we did a monthly contract, we'd be all over the place every single month, a lot of work, people keeping straight, a lot of data spreadsheets to keep in check? Well, the same is true even if you go with a quarterly method. Because companies may say, we're not going to change all of our pricing, we're not going to change our databases if fuel prices go up 1% or 2%. That's still a lot of work. So what companies will do is they'll put in what's called a qualifier that says, if fuel prices have gone up 3% or down greater than negative 3%, so negative 4, negative 5, something like that, then we will change the contract. So here you can see, because fuel prices only went up 2.68%, we have not changed our rebate. All right? Because in order to change our rebate, it has to have gone up plus or minus that 3%. Everybody kind of understand what I'm saying there? There's a qualifier. Okay? So that's why there's no change here. However, over here, okay, it's gone up over 14.46%. So you can see that starting in October, our rebate has increased. All right? So you can see the math there. J8 times 1 plus that change. So now our rebate is close to 3.5%. Back here, and then we do it again. You can see here that 1.75% isn't greater than 3%, so the rebate is the same. Okay. But then over here, fuel prices dropped by almost 13%. Okay. So now our rebate has dropped from 3.4 down to 2.99. Okay. Because of that qualifier, that plus or minus 3% qualifier. That's why there's two boxes that are red and the other ones are yellow. Yellow means something to look at there. So now this is where your project comes into place with the fixed versus variable. Had this company never done this variable rate method, they would have been at the fixed rate all the way through. Okay? They would never change it. Okay? Everybody see the difference there? Variable rate is using some sort of a raw material or other input to determine whether the price should change. Fixed is just saying it's the same thing all the way through. Now this is where you get your data from. So to put dollars to this. So we have the supplier. So this is how much we spent each month with that supplier. Okay? Each month, this is how much we purchased with that supplier. Okay? Now, if I were to go to the variable rate, you can see B13, which is the supplier spend, times B8, which is the variable rate. So I'm taking 3% of this number, 3% of this number, 3% of this number, 3% of this number, all the way through. I'm multiplying what we spent that month times the rebate that we received for that month. So those of you with accounting interest, what this means is accounts receivable department would be expecting a check from the supplier for $440.28. That's where accounts receivable comes in. So that's someone else's job, not related to any of this. They're not an analyst, they're an accountant. So they're expecting a check because the computer told them This month, the rebate is $440.28. Okay. Now down here, fixed rate supplier. It's a 3% all the way through. As you can see here, there's a difference number because we're in that's a variable. But it's the same type of formula. Instead of multiplying it, we're still multiplying against the supplier spend, but this time we're using the fixed rate percentage to calculate fixed supplier rate dollars. Okay. So now what this produces is a chart like this. As you can see, this is just a trend with the months and then the dollar values of each month's rebate. You can see here the red line, there is no blue line, it's because red and blue are the same thing at this point. Right. So if you scroll back up, in this whole time period, it's all 3%. Variable and fixed are the same rate because this didn't qualify for a price adjustment. There's no price adjustment here. It starts over in October where they start breaking away. Okay. So up in here. This is what you're after. Okay, after that long explanation and canvassing the spreadsheet, this is what you're after. From here, what would you say? Would you say that just by looking at this without increase or calculating all this, would the company have been better with a fixed or variable contract? Variable. Yep. And we know that because the blue line represents the variable line and it's a lot higher. So without doing any calculating. Now if, for example, let's just fix these numbers here. Okay, so what you're going to see in your data isn't as pretty as what I had up there for you to download. You're going to see hills, or you're going to see peaks and valleys. So you can't rely on the line chart to just quickly, real quick tell you the definite obvious. You'll have to calculate it out. You'll probably have to do a sum. Sum up all the variable rebate spend, sum up all the fixed variable or fixed spend, and see which one's greater. So, so it's not as easy as I just showed you in the 20 minutes or so. The actual project is going to require several things. Okay. Full screen. Full screen. Okay, the full screen option. Huh. Alright. I'll just do it this way. Okay. So you have to create a dashboard that shows fixed percentage, variable percentage, things like that. You have to do revenue comparisons, like I showed you. You have to do subtotals or totals of how much money would a variable contractor brought in versus a fixed. And one of your questions will be, well, what is a variable contract? That is up to you. Okay? I showed you an example of 3%. You might want to use that, but maybe you want to use 5%. You're going to look at data going back to 2007. So there's a lot more volatility in that data set. So you as a team decide whether it's 5%, 6%, 3%, 2%, 1%, no percent. So that's your decision. And that has to reflect all of your other data. So you have to make that pretty darn quick. What is your variable? Are you going to have a qualifier in your variable assessment? So again, variable, what does variable mean? It means looking at raw material prices to determine what the contract should be every month. Right. Chapter 7, good spreadsheet design. So I want it crisp and looking good. So you've all been doing that. Make note about anything interesting in the data. Analysis of the percent charged to suppliers. Is there a rationale? So some critical thinking. This spreadsheet here should give you raw material prices, especially this government site here. You can actually probably go to here without any of this stuff and get a lot of great information on diesel fuel prices. Also a great idea, celebration of scholarship on Friday. Sean Gilbert, he's a freshman in microeconomics. He's going to be doing a paper presentation on the crude oil market. So if you want to get a better understanding or deeper understanding of how the crude oil market functions for this project, I suggest you go into that presentation because you'll hit it from all kinds of different places. The other thing here, I'm skipping over a few things, but this is the media one. You must forecast revenue for 2014 and 2015. So you have updated information. So the spreadsheet stops in 2014. Okay, but that website will have fuel prices going up until last month. So you can do this. You can forecast the revenues. And sometimes forecasting revenues just means showing what we should have or could have made in money. It doesn't always mean linear regression or something like that. It just means show me what we could expect to make. And this here I already mentioned, you must identify a potential pricing mechanism. So again, is it at 3%? Is it 4%? Is it 2%? Is it 10%? Where prices have to move a certain percentage before you'll even have a meeting about changing prices. And then this is where I've mentioned already, you must make an official recommendation on whether to move to a variable pricing mechanism. If so, what is the mechanism? And then do this within your executive summary. So project paper presentation, your paper is an executive summary. 1 page, executive summary with your recommendations. And so really your executive summary is your presentation as well. However, you have to be able to command your data set, understand your data set, because people will ask questions. They'll ask something maybe about 2008 or 2007 or 2009. Say, well, I'm really concerned about what happened in 2009, blah, 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 yada, yada. So your launching pad should be your executive summary when you're preparing the presentation. So again, this isn't a 50-minute to 2-hour presentation. It's really, you're speaking about your executive summary. So if you want to look at it that way. We're going to scrap this one here. We're going to make an executive decision here. We're going to scrap the writing a letter informing a supplier. And we're just going to scrap that. So that gets rid of all that stuff. Okay, so no supplier letter. You're not writing a letter. You're just doing one thing, executive summary, as far as writing goes. And these are tips for you. So when you're doing your forecast, don't forget to train your data. So you might find that, oh, hey, let's do 3%. So that sounds good. That sounds reasonable. He did that on his example, so let's just copy him. Well, you might find that if you do 3% in a variable system, you're losing money. You could, hypothetically. That's up to you to discover. So when I say train your data set, run with your hunch or run with your instinct. See if it is a good decision based on what the data is telling you. Then you might have to redo it. You might have to say, okay, that's too much volatility or not enough volatility. Our company's losing lots of money. We could have been charging a higher rate for 6 months, but because we had a 7% qualifier, we're not getting as much money as we could have. So let's bump that down to 4% and see how much money we're going to bring in. So you might have to play around with certain things there. And then this is the point for discussion. Identify any cyclical or seasonality. So that's more for discussion point to help you be educated on the data set in front of people you would present to. As I said, they might ask you, well, 2009, blah, blah, blah. Have at least one person in your group specialize in that topic. And then finally, I want you to make sure that your work is explained, so use comments in your formulas. We talked a little bit about inserting comments. If you need a refresh, you go in here, insert comment, right-click. It doesn't have to be up here. There is an option up here, someplace to insert a comment, but just really quickly, whatever cell you're in, right-click, insert comment, and explain what you're doing. So, especially in this kind of stuff, because What you're designing is what they call a living document, where every month it's going to be updated with new fuel prices, new rebate dollars. And somebody in accounting will see this. Somebody in financial analysis will see this. The supplier will see this. So you could theoretically send this file to another company so that they can see the proof and they can understand your calculations. Because they might say, holy crap, I owe you $8,000. That doesn't make any sense. Let me see how you're calculating this. All right? So having comments, having the spreadsheet ready to go to share with them is a really good thing. Okay. So that's the project in a nutshell. Again, your objective is evaluate a fixed versus variable cost method, see which one's better for the company. You design the variable cost method with the qualifier, and then speak intelligently about what you worked on. Okay. What I've got here is freight terms actual for companies, just to share with you. Okay. And then I've got the supplier dollars over here. So what you would want to do, just to get you started on this, first you have to figure out the calculation. And then what you would do, if I were just going to show you an example, and you might not want to do it this way, is Acme Bearings, based on their spend of $308,000 for that quarter, times the rebate that we charged them, they would cut us a check, so our accounting department would expect a $9,260 check. Okay. And then the fun part is you get to drag that over. So what I just showed you is a combination of the percent changes and the spend. So this company would be cutting a check to Cargill Fastener in these amounts every month. What you need to do, so this sheet here where it says index, it could be considered index fixed. Okay? So you can run this all the way across. Let's just do up to here. Yep. I could literally run this all the way across because my formula is sound. So really quickly, I just did a fixed rate analysis. So if I were to just subtotal this, change it to dollar signs. In the Q1 2007, freight fees would amount to $685,000. So this is a big company. This isn't a small hardware store. This is a big company. So out of all the suppliers they deal with, their accounts payable department would have in their general ledger code $685,000 for Q1 07. Now, when you do your variable, so index variable, you would perform it the same way. Okay, the same way. Except this time, instead of using actual freight terms, you use what you create in your variable method. So using diesel fuel prices. Okay? So this project, once you just understand where the calculations need to be at, is really about creativity. It's not about doing fancy setups and spreadsheet design. Because I already did most of the first one just quickly here. Of course, I know how to do this. I've done this before. But so what I'm saying here is you would still use the supplier spend for Acme. So this would be the same, except now you would have a new tab that you create over here for freight terms variable. Or freight terms, maybe you want to do more than one variable. Impress us. Instead of just doing fixed and variable, maybe you want to do fixed, then variable 1, or -1, variable -2. And say, we've done one under 3% quarterly, And we've done one under 5% by quarter, so or biannually. So 2 perspectives. Never a bad thing. Strategic management, some of you know, we like to pepper you and say, okay, we hate that recommendation you just submitted, so let's pretend that one that wasn't out there. Of the other options, which one do you like best? Or, I like this option. I hate all your recommendations. Why is my option a bad one? So, kind of think in terms of that. That's what happens with strategic management. That many of you will see tomorrow. Well, some of you. So it's all about commanding your data. Even in strategic management, it's about commanding your business problem, understanding all the different inlets and outlets related to the situation. So. So again, when you have to create a new tab for your variable method and then calculate it out, it could be something like, and I'm just doing what's called pseudocode here. So if percent change in diesel fuel is greater than or equal to 0.03, then previous value times 1 plus percent change in diesel fuel. Okay. Again, this is pseudocode, but this is exactly kind of what you're doing. You're defining that 0.03, that's your qualifier. If you want it to be 10%, 3%, 3.5%, whatever it is, you decide that. But essentially, you're doing this. Don't put this into Excel. Again, that's pseudocode, which is just your logical statement of how you want to put this together, because that will give you errors in it. And so previous value would be over here, which in quarter 1 you don't have one. So you would just have your natural values, your actual values thrown in there. But going forward, your previous value is this, times you would have a diesel fuel price. So just like I showed you in my sample, you'll have to go and find this, basically. So you literally will have to find that. So when I think about how to set this up, you're going to want somebody, not all 4 of you have to speak in the presentation. Some classes we want you to do that, but I want you to work smart. So what I mean by that is you can have one person specialize in what's called external data, so the government data, getting diesel fuel prices, making sure that data is formatted properly and understood. So if somebody asks a question about it, that person can stand up, or you'll all be standing, but the person can respond. There isn't any, do you want to take this? Because that doesn't look good. Okay. That doesn't look good. Then you can have one person that's really good at navigating the spreadsheet. That's their job. They know it inside and out. They know where the comments are. They know how to move through the spreadsheet. Then you have what I call the painter, the person that can beautify the spreadsheet. This is not pretty, by the way. This is just a quick chart I came up with. I don't like it. That really understands how to put that together. And then you got to have the financial analyst, somebody that understands, and you might all, because it's upper division classes, but somebody that really understands why would we make this recommendation. Why wouldn't we? Better yet, if you like a recommendation, play devil's advocate. So we really like this. I think it looks obvious, right, guys? So, but why wouldn't we like this idea? Because there could be something out there that a veteran of the business knows that you don't know. Okay? So try to think a little bit. Why might this be a bad idea? Okay? That's really impressive. If you can pull that off, that really shows that you've really got good command of the project, good command of the data, and business acumen. So again, it's project, which is all this stuff, the spreadsheet, the dashboard, useful information. Paper is a one-page executive summary, and from that one-page executive summary, you will have content for a presentation, a short 10 to 15-minute presentation with a few questions. So each of them bleeds into the next one, or to me, they're stepping stones. You can't do the presentation until you understand what pricing mechanism you want to pull off or want to recommend. You can't write the executive summary until you know that your math works in your spreadsheet. So they all kind of hop onto each other. Okay? So you'll have the rest of today, Thursday, and then Tuesday, because a week from Thursday is study day. So there is one note here. Where is it? The due date. Oh yeah, by noon on study day. I need all of your materials by noon on study day. Because I have to hand out the executive summaries to the people that are going to be here. So, yep.
When will we be notified of what time we're going?
What I need you to do, I'm going to set up a Google Sheet here. I need you to come forward again and with your group. And then I'll figure that out. I'll have that out soon here. Okay, so I'll do that right now. I'll set up the Google form. For a minute.
Join us. All right.
Again, group of 4.
Go for it.
Get the band back together.
That's right. Until next year.
Do what? Oh, yeah.
Until next year.
Let's see here. 316.
There's a few rules in this.
Okay, so just pile on up and write your names down and which team you'll be on.
You got it? Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I need you then. I'm lazy to do the work.
Oh.
So it has to be a team of 4, it can't be 3 or 2.
I'm blanking. Oh, got it. Is this spelled right? Huh? I don't know if I spelled it. Yeah, you good.
No.
Oh.
Gosh.
Use.
I had to take that test
Okay.
for IBM, and then like they
I'm hoping
asked.
there wasn't a problem.
It was hard. It was like really weird, but then they threw all of those programs. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not sure if it's gender.
Thank you.
Just got ahead of myself.
So, but but they like sort of my work history. It's like, do you have greatest like history in the 7 years of employment history? And I haven't.
Yeah.
I started working when I was like 16 technically, and then like, it wouldn't let me enter like my work history unless I filled like all of them. So I only put my current employer, and then I emailed him and I was like, I can't enter my work history. I don't have 7 years.
Yeah.
So he told me that you can just edit it, but it doesn't fix it. You really do take action after.
I would also just every truck stop what they do. Somebody does it all.
No, it's
Mitch, right?
been all electronic.
There's 25 people in the class, by the way, so.
Yep.
Okay, just making sure you knew that. So, the person.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to in your group.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you too to see if you wanted that fifth person because I knew
Oh,
that would be.
that's, yeah.
All right. You already did the work for me.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of waiting to hear back. So do we want to
Yeah.
kind of running out of time.
Well, that's just strange that they invite you to do it after the second.
I know, and like, I don't know, like they never said I'd have to take a test, you know.
It's part-time job.
Well, it's an internship,
Yeah.
but it's paid, and it's it would be 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I don't know. And maybe like more people applied for it all of a sudden.
That's really strange that they'd have to say
Yeah, I think it's just part of this standard expectation, but like,
Yeah.
it's not very like. So I can go back and edit it, and then, like you said I could, but he didn't really give me instructions. I'm assuming it's a he. I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep you posted though.
Yeah, okay. So I've done it. Otherwise I've got
Does that work?